Let me read to you a passage from the 9th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 32 to 38. It's the Gospel for Tuesday of the 14th week of Ordinary Time. St. Matthew writes, "A demoniac who could not speak was brought to Jesus, and when the demon was driven out, the mute man spoke. The crowds were amazed and said, 'Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel.' But the Pharisees said, 'He drives out demons by the prince of demons.' Jesus went around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and curing every disease and illness. At the sight of the crowds, his heart was moved with pity for them, because they were troubled and abandoned, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, 'The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. So ask the master of the harvest to send out laborers for his harvest.'" That's from Matthew chapter 9, verse 32 to 38. It suggests thoughts about knowing Christ. What do I mean? Well, it is passages such as the one I read that give us a window into the heart and person of Jesus Christ. The Gospel accounts show him as unmistakably a person of enormous spiritual power. Where in the history of religions has there been a person of such spiritual power when faced with the demonic? There is no parallel in the Old Testament. No prophet showed such power over the demons as did Jesus Christ. Is there any parallel in Islam? Where is there a record of Muhammad or Zarathustra or Buddha doing this? It would be laughable to suggest that any of the great military conquerors, such as Alexander the Great or Julius Caesar, could do the like. With good reason do we read in our Gospel passage that the crowds were amazed and said, "Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel." I tend to think that nothing like it has been seen in the world. As well as this power over the demonic world, he displayed sovereign power over every disease and illness. There was no disease or illness which he could not heal, and even death could not defy Christ. He raised people from the dead, and of course would rise from the dead himself. Who is there in the history of the world who can be compared with Jesus of Nazareth in his stream of miracles in favor of the sick and the afflicted? Set Christ on the world stage, and he is seen as having inner power beyond compare. On one occasion he calmly, unhesitatingly, and in the presence of the religious leaders, forgave the sins of a sick person, and proceeded to back up this step by effortlessly healing the person of his paralysis. The first thing the average man or woman in history thinks of in God is his power. God is the one of great power, and Revelation informs us that he is actually almighty. Well, whatever God could do, Christ could do. Christ claimed to be God, though not the Father, and backed up his claims by his constant display of supernatural power. In fact, Christ's displays of power were displays of love and mercy. His power was manifest in mercy and compassion. We read in our passage that Jesus went around to all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom, and curing every disease and illness. At the sight of the crowds, his heart was moved with pity for them, because they were troubled and abandoned like sheep without a shepherd. Power, as it is played out in human history, has more often than not been far from merciful and compassionate. Not so with Christ. His heart was a heart filled with pity for human distress. Just as his power was divine, so too was his love divine. Each one of us ought every day place ourselves in the presence of Jesus, who lives with us as the head of his church, and think of his love and his power. As St. Paul wrote, Christ loved me and delivered himself up for me. Each of us can say the same thing. He is our Lord, and he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings. St. Ignatius Loyola, in his classic spiritual exercises, has a famous meditation on the kingdom. The one doing the retreat is invited to place himself in the presence of Christ as the King, considering him in the context of all those who could be considered as worthy of an enthusiastic following. Christ is the preeminent Lord beyond compare, the one who, whatever be the worth of other leaders in the stream of human history, is worthy of all our love and zeal. In this no one can rank with him, and it is clear from the Gospels that Christ himself knew this and claimed it to be so. Let us make it our daily business to come to know Christ in a truly personal sense. The more we know him, the more will our love for him have a chance to grow. The purpose of life, as it has been revealed to us by God, is to know, love, and serve the living, risen Jesus, and by means of this, to see and enjoy God in heaven forever and ever.